comments. You'll notice that you do not have parties on your tags, but I think that as we move along, they'll be held accountable for their lack of attendance. So the first step is that congratulations for showing up. That's a big deal. And again, I'm Andrew Martin. I'm a former state assemblyman. Had a lot of different positions in government. I'm a certified public accountant. And the last group was lucky I didn't ask my question about carried interest. All I'm going to say. Okay, let's start off with, we seem to have 4 of you, not 7 or 8. So why don't we do this? Why don't we start off with 1 minute for opening statements, and then we're going to proceed with the questions. The question format is that everyone will have, I'll go down the line, the panels will have 30 seconds to articulate their question. They can direct it to one of you, or in this case, typically with so many we've had yes or no answers. Maybe we can expand a little bit on that, but don't go overboard if it's to all of you, because we're trying to get as many questions, as much participation as possible. With that in mind, why don't we start with Dan? We can start with the opening statement, and let's do 1 minute for that. How's that?
Sounds great. First of all, thank you. I would like to echo the sentiment that I'm disappointed that most of the other candidates weren't here. I think it's disrespectful, and I actually ran into Lucy Flores today at the park where she was doing a fundraising event for one of her friends, and I asked if she was going to be joining us, and she kind of had a look on her face that was like, what? But the fact of the matter is, when people ask me why am I running, it comes back to a long story that I'd love to tell you individually about a governor who gave my grandfather some respect in the dying moments of his life. And what that taught me was that politicians should be accessible to their people. And I talked to thousands of people who tell me that they aren't accessible. But I also talked to thousands of people who are ready to kind of change things and shake things up. And people who are tired of not being able to get a hold of their politicians, not being able to have a voice, and not being able to be heard. So for those of you who are here, and for those of you watching, your voice is important. Let me be your megaphone. My name's Dan Rolle. I'm running as a Democrat in District 4. Thanks.
I'm kind of glad the other ones didn't show up. That means we get more face time. My name's Michael, and the reason I'm running is probably more so to educate the overall American population. Our government isn't as broken as we all think it is. It's a matter of probably mostly ignorance to our Constitution that's caused us so much problem. We keep sending the same people or different people to our congressional seats, and they really are not familiar with the laws of the land. They don't differentiate the parties. We're operating on the 4th branch of government. We no longer have a 3-branch government. We're under administrative law, which many of you folks would know. If I asked anyone in the room what's the difference between, say, Article 1 and Article 3 in the U.S. Constitution, they would know. And so, and what purposes are. So we're not broken. Our government isn't broken. Our management of our government is really what's broken. And that's why I'm running to more fully educate the general population and the people that you select. You need to really qualify them that they understand what the laws are in the land. Because every time we have a knee-jerk reaction to something, it's probably going to be administrative as compared to what the constitutional rights are. We have a conflict that goes on, and it's a constant conflict. We have a failing judicial branch of government.
Every time, please.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is this on? My name is Wayne J. Villines. My website is basically my name with .com at the end. I'm running for U.S. Congress as a Republican, predominantly because of the failure of our government in all 3 governing branches to adhere to the Constitution. You know, everybody in America knows that the politicians do not adhere to the Constitution, yet again and again we continue to have Congress passing legislation, signed into law, with the judiciary disregarding the fact that it's unconstitutional. That's my primary reason for running. I will be focusing, should I get elected, on making sure that we get back to the Constitution, making sure that we get our representation levels up. In case you don't know, We've been stuck at 435 representatives since 1912. And that basically means that the amount of representation that we are getting is being skewed every year as a result of increase of population. It's time to change that back to where we have every representative with the same amount of people. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Steve Brown. I grew up in Minnesota, spent 3 years in the Army, and moved to Las Vegas in 1982. I was a dealer downtown for a few years, and I started my own business in '86, which I'm still doing. And it took so long to recover from the Great Recession that I took a part-time job at night back as a dealer again. So I'm the business owner in the daytime, and I work for the minimum wage plus tips at night. And the reason I'm running, there's so many issues that never get talked about by either party. There's actually a lot more bipartisanship in Congress than there is disagreement. It's just that they never talk about everything they agree on, like the $19 trillion debt, stealing the money out of the Social Security Trust Fund. But one of the big issues is just the awful way small businesses are treated. In millions of cases around the country, the government makes more money off the business than the people who own it. And that's a big issue, especially when you're talking about raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. I got a lot at stake in that, both during the day and at night, and I'm adamantly opposed to it by either as the business owner or as a minimum wage earner. It's just a terrible idea, and I'd like to talk more about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We were rolling, I'm actually going to just start back where we left off, if that's okay. And we should be able to get through, everyone should be able to get their question with more people responding. I think we were up to Jim.
Jim Jonas, I'm the radio show host for Veterans of Politics. Thank you guys all for coming. I know it's kind of a rough way to spend a Saturday, but you decided to run, so it's kind of just part of the deal. My question is, currently in Nevada, we do have a veterans court. There's some issues with it that we're working on. However, at the federal level, there is not anything currently being done to create a veterans court on the federal level. If elected to Congress, would you be willing to put forth legislation to get a veterans court at the federal level?
Where you starting?
You want to start?
Yeah, sorry. We'll start from right to left.
Your right or our right? Military right.
My right.
Okay.
So go ahead, Dan.
Gage left.
All right. Well, one of the things that I've learned is in running for politics is you shouldn't trap yourself into answering things you're not fully versed on. And I guess that if it's okay, I'd like to ask a follow-up. What are you looking to answer? I mean, what are you looking to address with that question?
Okay. Well, currently at the state level, if you go into court and you are a veteran, and you sit and you tell the court that you are a veteran, actually they are supposed to ask you, and you sit and you state that you are a veteran, then what that allows for is for you to go into a court that is specifically educated in veterans issues such as PTSD and TBI, traumatic brain injury, and others.
Okay, I mean, and again, this is where I think it's important for politicians to be honest, and this is something I'd want to look into more, but I can tell you specifically to your, what you referenced, PTSD, trauma, and how that affects what happens to our veterans when we try to integrate them. If the program that you're talking about is helpful and the end result is that, for example, criminal recidivism is down, or we get them into the right programs, and those are demonstrated to be successful, I don't know why we wouldn't look into that. Obviously there are certain things and certain crimes which are always going to probably fall under the jurisdiction of local, state, and or federal courts. But I think the core issue that I'm hearing from you, and again, that's one of the things I'm learning to do is listening, it sounds like the justice system isn't helping the military, specifically because some of the problems are happening because we're not helping them get out correctly. And that's what I'm hearing in your question, and I think that I would absolutely support programs to do that, 100%.
Okay, thank you. Mike?
Well, we're talking about the judicial branch of government. We're talking about, if you're talking about the federal government, on a federal level, you're in a U.S. Article I court, as opposed to a U.S. Article III court, which at that point, you're under federal law, and the Congress can do under Article 4 whatever it wants to do. So it's a very simple program, and I would certainly support that at the federal level. But at the state level, in Nevada in particular, we're under Article 4 and Article 6. And on Article 4, it's administrative law, which is the same as Article 1 in the U.S., which is a legislative body, an enactment of administrative laws. Your rights and my rights are protected in Article 6 court as opposed to an Article 6 or 4 court. So under administrative law, you can generally do whatever you'd like to do. It's very simple to effectuate legislatively. And our legislative body it provides for that. So you could literally write that in legislatively and it wouldn't be a big issue on the state. The problem we have right now is we no longer have a dual judicial system going on because most attorneys and judges don't know the difference. When you go into a courtroom, they subject you to administrative law as opposed to your constitutional rights. They will tell you have no constitutional rights in that courtroom. That tells you you're in a jurisdictional dispute. And that jurisdictional dispute is supposed to be resolved before you move forward. So the answer to your question is, it's provided for us legislatively. It would be very easy to enact, and I certainly would support it.
Okay, thank you.
I'm in favor of anything that helps veterans in any situation. However, I think a more prudent approach would be to be in a more preventative aspect. I don't think anybody should be getting out of the military and being left out on their own, where they can wind up getting into trouble. So it is my opinion that it is more prudent to be more proactive before we have to have the courts involved. Thank you.
Thanks. Steve?
Yeah, I kind of agree. I'm not in favor of starting another court. I'd be far more in favor of the preventative part. I use VA healthcare, and I can tell you right, they're not going to fix that VA healthcare system. They're not serious at all about it. They got this company in charge of it now. They got fired from the Department of Defense, and now, this is my understanding, they took over managing the VA hospitals. I mean, and they don't, they're going around the country, some of the presidential candidates demanding corporations provide maternity leave for women who work there. You know the VA does not provide maternity leave for the women who work at VA hospitals. I had a VA doctor tell me she worked 2 days before she had her baby. Then they called her in to work. She was in the delivery room delivering her own baby. Then she took 4 weeks off, partly because she needed the money and partly because VA was so understaffed, she went back to work again. Now, there is no way that if you treat the women who work there like that, there is no way they're going to fix the VA healthcare. They're not serious. They're only serious about talking about it, but I'll guarantee you 2 years from now, you're going to have the same issues with the VA that you got right now. You're still going to have a backlog for VA disability benefits. The hospital's still going to be, there's good people working out there. They're good people, but it's the management that's inept. And there's no indication they're going to change that at all. So no, I would not be in favor of starting a VA court. I'd be in favor of the preventative aspect, fixing that first.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, actually, welcome Rodney Smith. I don't know if you've heard the question, but I'll ask him to ask Jim to repeat it, and then you can jump right in there. And welcome aboard.
Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Smith. My question was regarding Veterans Court. Currently on the state level, we do have a Veterans Court. There's some language on the state level that we want to clean up. However, currently at the federal level, there is no such court. If elected to Congress, would you be willing to put forth legislation to create a Veterans Court at the federal level?
Well, thank you for bringing that question to light, because that is something that is of importance to me, as many veterans who find themselves in contact with the judicial system at every level. Oftentimes it's associated to some illness with war, whether it's PTSD, TBI, or a combination of the two. So after talking to some of the judges, I've decided that we do need to have a Veterans Court at every level. Now that doesn't mean that it's going to solve many of the problems that leads veterans to getting to that point, but it does ensure that when they do get to that point, that they will be treated in accordance with their particular situation, which oftentimes is different from the general public.
Thank you very much.
Hi, this is Scott LaFato with Citizens for a Better America. Gentlemen, this week, Russian fighter jets buzzed one of our ships in the Black Sea. And I don't know if you've ever been buzzed by a fighter jet, but it will wake you up. Now, I'd like to ask each one of you for your response on that and your position of what should be done if that happens again. Dan, we'll start with you and we'll move down this way.
Yeah, I actually have a video that posted on my website, Let's Go Nevada, or so, yeah, Let's Go Nevada.com. You forget all these things, right? It's very provocative. The jets screeched by, you know, that really close, and there's a couple of really good photos where it looks like, I think it was within 30 feet at times, which is super dangerous. And it was not responsible, and it was certainly something that, unfortunately, you know, we had to bear witness to on the internet. And I think what it does is it undermines our strength in the region when we don't respond accordingly. I don't think that it would have been appropriate to enact and use force. I think that the men and women on this ship took the right decisions. I think that, you know, in terms of how we respond to that, if that's your specific question, you know, that's a matter of interpretation of the law and what they did. My opinion and understanding on some research is that while provocative, those jets acted in accordance with international law and the fact that they were international waters.
Okay, Dan, thank you very
Okay.
much. Let's move on to Mike.
Well, I'm not one to jump into these issues, so I'm not for shooting the jet down and creating a problem. I'm not sure there is a problem at this point. I mean, it's come and gone and off we go. Now, if it becomes a repetitive action, then I would certainly then address the issue. But at this point, I don't think fear-mongering is going to help.
All right, thanks, Mike. Wayne, your position?
With regards to the specific incident, believe it or not, it's actually more dangerous than what we are being told, because when you have fighter jets coming that close to you, you have all kinds of injuries that can occur as a result. But the problem goes even further because, according to an article I read last summer on the internet, Russia has actually been flying nuclear-laden planes over U.S. territory, not just up to the international demarcation zones, but over our territory with very poor response from our military. We need to get our military strength back up, but we also need to get our economy, not just ours, but the world's economy back up to prevent further degradation of world security, and also to discourage countries like Russia from being encouraged to prepare for war. And I think that's what Russia is preparing for.
All right, thanks, Wayne. Steve, your position, please.
Yeah, maybe it's just Vladimir Putin doing some saber rattling, but let's not overreact. It is in the Black Sea. I mean, he's no threat. He's not going to do anything. He's not that stupid that he's going to attack an American ship. He's probably just trying to act tough again. It should be done diplomatically behind the scenes. I'm not saying you should disregard it completely, but let's not overreact and engage in fear-mongering. So basically, that should be done at the presidential and the Secretary of State behind the scenes. Take care of that.
Saber rattling is exactly what it is. My experience in combat zones is this is typically the case. Oftentimes it's to provoke a response. Sometimes it's to provoke a response to see how quickly our response time and to test our capabilities. So I think the best action that we can do is to have inaction as far as our military, and this is just a standard operating procedure when you're involved in these types of environments.
Would you, Rodney, just a quick follow-up question. Would you sync your radars on that jet? Your anti-aircraft radar, so that the jet knows that you have intention to shoot?
Well, I would like to think that the radar was already had it painted pretty well, but if you're asking me directly what would I do, I think that as a United States fighting force, we always have to be ready, because even though it looks like they're just saber rattling, every once in a while the saber slips, so we have to be prepared for that. So yes, I would paint them with the radar, but it would just be for defensive purposes only.
All right, thank you.
Rowena Griffithson, founder of Shy Family Foundation and talk show host. How do you feel about amnesty and for those who came illegally? If someone does something illegal Should they be punished? If so, does your opinion apply to people who border jump and overstay their visas? This question is for you, Rodney.
The United States really has to state unequivocally what its immigration policy is, and that needs to be unified across the board. We've seen what happens when we have amnesty, is that amnesty brings people again. And because they're coming to work, and as long as our corporations provide work for them, they will come. So I believe that amnesty is a failure, but we need to definitively say what our immigration policy is, what is and is not citizenship, and then be definitive on what benefits we give and what we do not give. So I am not in support of any type of amnesty programs. What I am in support of, though, is people are coming to work. And as I said earlier, as long as our corporations hire them, they will come. If we want to stop this type of activity on our borders, then the object is to make the penalty so stiff for those corporations and have inspection regimens so stringent that it will make it unbeneficial for those companies to hire. As long as it's a slap in the wrist, the people will keep coming and the corporations will keep hiring.
Okay, is this a question for everybody or just for
I would
Rodney?
like everyone to answer.
Okay, I just want to make sure we have enough time to get everyone else who wants to ask a question in too, so, thank you.
Well, in my night job, about 2/3 of my workers, maybe a little higher, are immigrants. Everybody, they all follow the rule of law and came here legally. Now, as far as someone who came here illegally, the truth of the matter is I've been in business since '86. Now, that's when they passed immigration reform the last time. Not one time in all that time has any homeowner, any homeowners association, any business of any kind ever asked me where my workers come from. I have to provide lots of paperwork, proof of insurance, business license, all this stuff, but nobody ever asked me where my workers came from. The real problem is the American people are perfectly willing to hire someone undocumented. And it's all over town. It's if you wanted to bust some people in Congress, find out where they live, find out who's doing the landscaping in front of the house in the HOA, you could bust a lot of people in elected who are railing about illegal immigrants coming in. They're actually part of the problem hiring them. So my attitude is, look, you need to secure the border. I'm not talking about a Donald Trump-like wall, but let's at least have some laws. But I would prefer an accelerated process to get a green card than get in line behind everybody else. I don't think it's fair that somebody should come and follow the rule of law like my coworkers did, and then have somebody else come illegally and cut in front of them. I'm against that.
With regards to amnesty program, there's a lot of issues that have to be addressed, including the possibility that terrorists can come through illegal pathways and so forth. And as long as we keep these people tucked away in criminal statuses, they're not going to come forward to help us protect this country. On the other hand, we also have the problem that a lot of these people entering our country illegally are doing so with desperation. You know, it's easy to sit here and say, let's follow the rule of law, but if you're hungry or your children are hungry and you need to get money, sometimes you're going to do things a little bit under the table. We need to reform the entire immigration process so that it does become easier for them to come in legally when we do bring them in. Those that are here, we need to make sure that in the very least, they do pay for coming in illegally, but at the same time, give them the opportunity to gain the legal right to stay, only as long as they are keeping in a positive aspect. Bear in mind that there has been experiments done trying to see if Americans will take the jobs that illegals take, and it's been proven many of the jobs Americans will not take.
Well, first of all of the, what we call illegal aliens, are provided for under our Constitution in Article 4. Congress has the exclusive authority to place all of those individuals on jurisdictional property that the United States actually owns and controls. So subsequently, all those people could be placed in any of the territories or enclaves perfectly legally, according to the U.S. Constitution, because that's the authority that was given to our Congress. Now, when you start moving these individuals into states, now you're violating sovereignty provisions. Now, that doesn't mean states don't have the ability to take foreigners for work programs, but they have the right to manage that. So you can't just bring millions and millions of people through Washington, D.C. and disperse them through the United States, or have them come over and run through the United States without any checks and balances. States have checks and balances, the federal government has checks and balances. The problem is our governments don't know what our checks and balances are. And so until our government actually understands what they're doing, I don't see that we're going to solve the problem. No big walls, no drones, no picking people up. It's not going to help one bit. We have a fundamental management problem in our government, and it is our government. And I'll tell you who's responsible. Every day when you look in the mirror, that's the responsible party.
Does anyone want to actually propose a solution? Okay. So first of all, I just want to say, wow,
Do I get an option for this?
Well, I would like to hold on
I
a
gotta-
second.
I
It's
gotta
not a
rein-
debate, it's a town hall.
I gotta rein this in, Dan. It's not a debate, it's an interview.
Sure, but I'm not sure.
I don't
But
want-
I'm not going to stand by while someone makes a statement like when addressing legal immigration that we should look at the yard workers in front of our yard. That's racist.
Well,
And that's
figure out how to- figure out how to say
well, we're talking about it right now.
Okay.
Also, gentlemen, the correct term, as I learned, and this is not anyone's fault, it's undocumented immigrants is the correct term to use for people who are in our country illegally. So anyways, I think that making a statement like you need to look at your front yard for the people that are mowing your yard is no different than saying you need to look in the kitchen for someone making any particular type of food, and it's not going to solve any of these problems. What we need to start doing is training people how to treat these people who are in our country, who are in an undocumented status humanely, so they're not afraid to come forward. That's the biggest challenge. We actually talk to those people, it's because they're scared, not because they want to be breaking the law. So it's really simple. The first thing you do is you start training the people who handle undocumented immigrants to handle them with humanity. You create a system where they feel safe coming forward, and to answer your question specifically, with the fact that we have anywhere between 12 to 20 million people who are in this country who have undocumented status, yeah, we have to figure out some sort of amnesty for those people, or we're going to have a situation that gets out of control really, really quickly. Now, it should be harder to come to this country if you are in an undocumented status than if you come to the country and you follow all the rules. There are people who've been waiting for 9 and 10 years doing everything right, so it can't be any easier. And we definitely need to look at how we handle taxation, and also how we look at, like fines and that sort of thing. But to answer your question, we have 12 to 20 million people in this country legally. Someone has to actually have courage and solve the problem instead of, these sort of racial baiting things that people are doing in our country right now. It's inappropriate, it's not solving the problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblyman John Moore. Dan, this question is for you. With regards to the Second Amendment, the Constitution states that our right to bear arms shall not be infringed. What is your stand on Congress trying to ban certain types of weapons from a law-abiding citizen ownership?
Are you talking about what sometimes people call assault weapons? That are talking about
That's the PC term that people
Yeah.
come up with, yes.
So, as a Democrat, I definitely fall on sort of the exterior of the Democratic Party. I am a gun owner, and I think that, when it comes to specifically what people call assault rifles, which are AR-15s and that sort of thing, I don't see a need to ban those weapons. I don't at this time. There's a much longer answer there, but I don't think that's going to solve the problem.
Thank you.
This question, I'm sorry, this is Nathan Atkins, Army, business owner. The question is for everyone on the panel. Jobs are everything, right? Work is everything. Small business ownership is everything. If an economy is working, people are happy and it's functional. What is your specific plan to make your congressional district more lucrative for the citizens of your district? Start on any end you want, Mark.
Why don't we start with Rodney?
Well, I think that part of the CD4 is North Las Vegas, which is doing a pretty good job now in bringing new businesses into the valley. And I think that a lot of times businesses want to come here because of the tax breaks, the tax benefits associated with the state, but they have a problem with the workforce and they want a more educated workforce. So for example, around the VA hospital is a great location for a lot of medical businesses and operations that come in, but they have to have that educated workforce. So I think that one of the first things that we need to do as a district, or really as an area and as a state, is to look at our education system from top to bottom to determine, is it producing the type of workforce, labor force, that we need for the high-tech businesses that would love to relocate to the valley, whether it's in medical or whether it's in some of the other technologies associated with internet. Because presently, we have a disconnect with the output of students and their knowledge base and the type of jobs and skills that are needed to fill those jobs. So the first thing for me, besides just looking for businesses in general, is to make sure that we have the proper educated workforce for these high-tech businesses that would love to come to the valley.
Well, at the federal level, for the small business person, they have big tax cuts for that, and the corporate tax rate and the self-employment tax, which never gets talked about. But then at the state level, it is absolutely not true that Nevada is business friendly. I've been in business since '86. Last year was the 4th time the Nevada legislature has raised taxes. You know, that's 5 governors in a row have raised taxes. I don't know if you realize that. But it actually, what's even much worse than that are all the hidden taxes. It's just horrible what they're doing. They take one license and they split it up into 3, like those little electric plugins in your house, that's 110 current. Electric stove, electric dryer, that's 220. Then there's 660. What they did, they split them up into 3 different licenses, 3 different bonds, and they did that with plumbing contractors, with electrical contractors. You just go right down a long list. And there's so many taxes, more taxes and fees that are leaves in the forest, and yet they still keep on coming up with new ones, and then they give this false narrative that Nevada is business friendly. That is absolutely false. So a lot of it has to do with the federal government, but it's the state and the local governments that there's really the ones who are hurting the small business people badly. And that's, even if you're a federal representative, when they passed the largest tax increase in Nevada history, we had 4 Republicans in Congress. Now, John Moore's sitting there, you tell me, if they had gone up to Carson City and spoke out against this, Preston Hardy, Joe Heck, Dean
I'm
Heller,
gonna call time, sorry.
they could have stopped it.
I personally think that there are 2 separate issues associated with this. First of all, you have your local governments putting all kinds of rules and regulations that interfere with businesses being able to develop. Also, with that same video, I think it is also harmful to suggest that we should be attracting businesses to move from one area to another. It's one thing if they expand into the area, but it's a totally different thing when they abandon one locality for another. I think the best thing we could do is really create a small business financial support system that would actually allow people, for example, people who are currently unemployed, to set up businesses so that they can actually help build the local business economies. Because after all, the small businesses are what support the economy. Without them, the economy is dead.
Politicians talk in terms of jobs, economists talk in terms of consumption. If you're not building a marketplace on manufacturing, there'll be no jobs. So first thing you have to address is the problems in the tax codes and statutory provisions that prevent small businesses from getting into the game. Then you have to address the judicial problems you have that enforce administrative outside the box that it's supposed to be in. So until you start addressing some of the fundamental issues that we can address, I don't see much change.
So small business is my wheelhouse. Is actually what I do. You can go to my website, let's go nevada.com, and see my history. Specifically, what we need to do in CD4 is we need to build the infrastructure. America's 17th in broadband standards in the world. So we need to build a massive infrastructure in terms of high-speed internet in the rural areas of our state. That's going to help in bring the kind of companies that we all talk about high-tech jobs, but they're not going to come here if we don't have the infrastructure. So, yeah, it's true. Small business is hard. It's actually, I now know, easier to run for Congress than it is to start a small business. And it's easier to get $250,000 in student loans than it is to get a $5,000 loan to start a small business. But what we're not prepared for is we're making policies for the next 2 months, the next 5 months. We need to make policies for the next 20 years and the next 50 years. The way that small business works now is changing rapidly. The on-demand economy with companies like Uber and Lyft are creating opportunities that we need to educate people on. And yeah, we do need to invest a little bit in what we're spending in terms of getting people access to capital to start those small businesses. It's pretty simple.
Who's up next there? Rob?
Ron Lauer, U.S. Army. So if you're elected to Congress, you have to make decisions. We have a $19 trillion debt. You have to decide how you're going to spend resources. We had obviously CNN came out with an article last year that 260,000 veterans died while waiting for care. I was one of those guys who had to wait 9 months for an endoscopy. I couldn't even get reimbursed the $1,200 out of pocket for my own treatment. So you have to make a decision as a member of Congress. And if you have to make a choice between funding illegal immigrants and welfare for illegal immigrants, and veterans benefits and services for veterans, please give me your choice, starting with Rodney.
Well, we know that the president's #1 job is to protect this country. In order to protect this country, it needs the United States fighting men. So of course, when those folks have served their time, they become veterans, and they should be just as important as veterans. So veterans, in my opinion, are up there at the top, and those things associated with veterans. So veterans and veterans benefits should be funded. So that's if it's an either-or choice, and that was your question. But I would also like to suggest that there are other means and other things that we can do so that we can sort of take the onus so much from it being an either-or, but keep veterans first.
Well, we have enough money to fix veterans' health care. I know we're a good place to get it. They admit that they lose $261 billion a year in waste, fraud, and abuse, which I think that's a nice term for sleazy deals for their friends. We lose $37 billion in foreign aid, welfare for tobacco companies, welfare for coal mines, and you can go down a long list of departments that should be either eliminated or cut back on.
That's not my question. My question is, do you support cutting off illegal immigration, welfare for illegal immigrants, in favor of veterans' benefits? That's my question, sir.
Welfare for illegal immigrants?
Welfare benefits for illegal immigrants.
We should be giving welfare for illegal immigrants, but as far as veterans' health care, there's plenty of money to help fix veterans' health care other than, but I agree, no, we shouldn't be giving welfare for illegal immigrants, no.
My personal take on this is Americans first, in all things. Illegal immigrants need to wait in line as far as obtaining benefits and so forth. Take care of Americans first.
Did you say 17 trillion funded debt?
19 trillion.
19 now, and I know we've got another 105 trillion in unfunded debt, so it's much higher than you're presenting it. My father died from throat cancer at 64, waiting for the VA. So yeah, we have some problems. Maybe we should get rid of the UN and take that money and apply it to ourselves.
That wasn't the question.
So the answer is no. I would take away from illegal benefits, as far as I'm concerned, to illegal immigrants.
I mean, Rob, with all due respect, it's a very good sort of baby question, but the fact is you can do both, and you're not gonna trap me into saying I'm gonna do this or that, because we can do both. It's simple, like it's not that challenging. Trying to say that, hey, we have to answer this question this way or that way to solve the problem. There is a ton of rampant abuse and spending, and that's one of the ways we can fix the problem, but I'm not gonna dehumanize people who need help.
Thank you.
Robert Faust, thank you for being here. This question will be for the whole panel. We would start with Mr. Smith. Where are you at on background checks for weapons today?
Well, first of all, I am a weapons owner and grew up around weapons, originally from North Carolina. There's nothing wrong with sensible background checks. The problem is that the background checks have to work. And without the system working properly, then background checks become fairly useless, as sometimes they are now. Now, that's not to say that background checks don't catch some potential offenders, so we do need to have it. I think the system just needs to be beefed up from what it is now, but it needs to work. So my position is, let's have a reasonable system, but let's have a system that works, that's adequately funded, and that works in a timely manner.
Yeah, I'm a favorite on a limited basis. leery of giving the government too much power to start fishing and going on a fishing expedition. But yeah, well, if you just enforce the laws you've got now, background checks. I own 4 guns. I didn't have a background check on any one of them, so I guess it'd be hypocritical if I started demanding them for somebody else. But on the same token, you don't want some nut job going and purchasing a high-powered rifle. But I'm just so leery. Congress never knows when to stop. It starts with one thing. It starts with a business license, and before you know it, there's 17 different types on a convenience store. So you got to be very careful before you give Congress any more power to do anything.
Thank you.
The Second Amendment actually ties gun ownership to militia for the purpose of safeguarding our country. I actually got told by a congressional aide once that we don't want to deputize Americans to secure our country. I personally think I am deputized, and in every state, everyone is automatically part of the militia. As far as background checks, I do believe that it's okay to do background checks as long as the government is actually paying attention. When our FBI is getting 4 or 5 different weapons purchases for the same person who has no history in gun ownership and they don't catch the dangers associated with that, it's not about background checks, it's about why is the FBI not doing their job.
The FBI has on a webpage all the data you could ever imagine for guns, and I'm telling you, as far as guns goes, we really don't have a gun problem in America. What we do have is a social economic discrimination problem in America. And if you look at the demographics, you'll see where the gun crime is committed, and predominantly where groups of individuals are committing these crimes. And so the problem isn't the gun, the problem is the social economics. And until we deal with that issue, I don't think there's going to be a...
So is that a yes or a no?
That would be a...
Maybe?
Pardon?
Maybe?
Maybe what?
Maybe we're going to have background checks, or maybe...
No, I'm not for a background check at all.
Okay, thank you. Next man.
Every time there's a mass shooting or every time there's a major crime involving a gun, the price of ammunition, the price of firearms goes up, and there's a mad rush to the firearms stores. I'm so tired of people saying that Obama's going to take everyone's guns. He's almost done. He hasn't taken your guns. We need to move on. If you support background checks, a gun is no different in terms of its ability to kill you than a vehicle is. And a background check is a certified process that checks to see if you have something in your background that could prevent you from owning a firearm, and it's responsible. In fact, my major gun platform is to allow private sales of guns to have access to the same system that gun stores use. So if you want to sell your gun privately because you don't want it anymore, you should feel really good that you're selling it to someone who's not purchasing that weapon illegally, which happens a lot right now. In fact, there was a study on Backpage.com that found that 2 out of 10 people who are buying a gun privately on Backpage were illegal. They weren't allowed to own that weapon. And so part of my platform is to open up the NCIS program so that people can actually check, the NICS program, thank you, to actually check to see if they're selling their firearm legally. It'd be a very responsible thing to do.
Okay, where we're at this point, I'm going to give the last question of this forum to Ron Q, and then we're going to go into closing statements because we're at that time.
Gentlemen, my name is Ron Q, founder of Ron Q Corporation. This is a 2-part question. Do you believe in term limits for both U.S. Congress and U.S. Senate? And the second question is, if you do, then what is the magic number for that term? Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
I believe that our current form of government sets term limits in the people's vote. And it's up to the people to decide whether they want to have that representative to continue. So I think sometimes when we look at term limits, we're looking at something to escape our responsibility as good citizens and cast an informed vote. So I'm not informed for any other legalized or new system in place other than utilize the one that we have and for our citizens to be more active in the blessing that we have to vote.
Yes, I'm in favor of term limits, 12 years each for the House and for the Senate, with a lifetime ban on lobbying for everybody in Congress and also for the staff members. Once you become a Congress or staff member, you're banned for life from becoming a lobbyist.
I actually kind of addressed this in a constitutional amendment proposal that I have posted on my website, rather than term limits, I would rather have term limitations where a person who runs for an office and receives it can only serve one time. But once they're out of office, they can turn around and run again, but they have to leave office first.
I think we revert back to the prior to 1913 constitutional provisions for our federal representatives. We'd be much better off in the long run regarding the amount of money necessary and the term restrictions. It puts the checks and balances back into the state at a local level, and we, people in Nevada, would be able to move our elected officials from time to time, and we can certainly recall them and remove them from office at any given time as a legislative body.
I do not support term limits. I think the reason that is because we need to improve voter engagement. One of the reasons that people start talking about term limits is because they get frustrated with the elected officials that they have for some of the reasons that I talked about in my opening remarks. And if we can get, especially the millennial generation, which is 77 million people, a little more excited and participating in the process, then a lot of the conversation about term limits gets sort of washed away because people actually feel like the people who are in office are representative of their needs. So no, I don't support term limits.
Okay, it's that time. It's closing statements. Why don't we start with Rodney and work our way down the line. 90 seconds, please.
Well, first of all, thank all of you for having this forum. I think it's very important for veterans to be engaged in our government. After all, most of us who served, well, all of us who served, took an oath to protect this country from enemies both foreign and domestic, and all too often today, our enemy is amongst us. It's apathy, it's a lack of involvement, and it's a lack of knowledge. So I would like to run for Congress to get your vote as well as the rest of the folks in CD4 so that we could have more veterans participation in the running of our government at the congressional level. As many of you know, we're losing folks who've served in the military who are now in Congress. And I think that's reflected in the inaction of Congress. One of the great things about veterans is that when we're active duty, we're taught to march forward. And there's no preparatory command for marching in reverse. So we need to move this country forward, we need to move this state forward, and I think the attitude of veterans is to get things done and learn how to work with our fellows and our ladies who are our peers to ensure that we do the people's business. And I think that as a veteran and my other experiences, I am perfectly suited for that particular position, and I would love to have your vote to represent you in CD4 as well as the rest of the state.
Well, thank you for allowing me the privilege of participating in this forum. And like I said earlier, there are so many issues that never get talked about by either party. There's a lot of talk about income equality, helping out the poor, the system is rigged. But I'm a small business owner, I've been since 1986, and the people who are accusing the system of being rigged are some of the people who rigged it. There's always new taxes and fees for the small business person. Have you noticed that when they're talking about the minimum wage, nobody mentions the small business person? Check it out, check their websites out. You won't find anything at all about it. There's about 20 million small business people. And in millions of cases, the government actually makes more money off the business than the people who own it. Now, how can you ever get the economy going when you treat small business people like that? So I'd like to really talk in depth about that and stop this false narrative about Nevada being business friendly, because it plainly isn't. And I can go on a long list of grievances, real ones. And I also work for the minimum wage that night, and I'm telling you that is just an awful idea. I don't have enough time to tell you why, but at the casino I worked at, I worked there in 1982 to 88. I was out of the business for 25 years. I needed that part-time job. I ended up back at the same place. I estimate they eliminated about 75% of the jobs there from what there was 34 years ago. That's like that, kind of all over town, 50, 75%. And you go ahead and raise that minimum wage to $15 an hour, and I'm telling you that it's not if it's going to cost jobs, it's how many by percentage in each place is it going to cost. But again, thank you for allowing me to participate.
I, like everybody else, would like to thank you all for the opportunity to be here to try and get your endorsement. I consider the Constitution to be the number one issue. I do not believe that it is appropriate to have any kind of furtherance of any kind of campaign without a strong backing for the U.S. Constitution. And unfortunately, we oftentimes get a lot of pretty words about the Constitution, but no real commitment to stand with the Constitution. So, again, that's my priority, should I become a congressman. Thank you.
I appreciate y'all having us come here, and I certainly appreciate my fellow tenants for taking the time. I think one of the biggest issues that I certainly want to put out here again, over and over again, is we're failing to manage our government. Our government isn't as broken as everyone wants to think. There's no great conspiracy to take over the world as everybody wants to. The problem is we just fundamentally no longer understand the rule book that we have. And so we're off following some other rule book. We're making up as we go along. I hear people talk about flat taxes all the time. I doubt very seriously any of those people have ever read the Internal Revenue Code. I've read the Internal Revenue Code manual, and it's not broken. It's absolutely accurate. It doesn't cheat people like people think. What it does do is it fails to recognize in our judicial branch of government those that are subject to income taxes and those are not. So if you look under Article 7701, you're either subject or you're not subject. If you're not subject, it's not an issue. If you are subject, you need to pay. It's like anything else. We have a great form of government. We just have a really poor management at this point, and that's, again, all of us. We do not know what the rules are, but yet we continue to go to Washington, D.C. or Carson City, and we make it up as we go. We're a politically correct, motivated society that's failing at every level. And that is you and I, if you look in the mirror and you get that Constitution out, and you can understand what it says. It's broken, and it's broken because we've allowed it.
Again, I'd echo the thanks for everyone that's here today. I appreciate the opportunity. My dad is in the military, my uncle's in the military, 4 of my cousins are in the military, my stepson's father's in the military, and I know that some of the things that we have to deal with as military families are really challenging, like having to be on the phone for 10 hours to solve a $75 billing inaccuracy. Last night I was at a Filipino Association meeting where we were honoring 3 veterans of World War II who were 80 years old. We're still fighting to get them a Congressional Medal of Honor, despite the fact that over 300,000 of them served and helped us liberate really the world in World War II. I recognize this is a veterans in politics meeting, and we're not doing enough in our country to support the men and women in our armed forces, both while they're in the armed forces and when they leave the armed forces. Statistically, it is more dangerous to leave the military now because of PTSD than to be in active duty combat. You're less likely to get shot by a sniper than you are to commit suicide in the military when you come back now. That's because we're not setting our men and women in the armed forces up correctly, and we're not doing the due diligence. We should be creating programs in the military that transfer to the private sector when they are out of the military, so you can get not just a job, but some of the best jobs in the world because you've been enabled to do so. So again, I kind of suck at this being a politician thing. I apologize. I'm not a politician, I'm a neighbor. I really appreciate the dialogue. The one thing that I have learned is that we're all just people at the end of the day. Sometimes we get really passionate and it makes us angry. But at the end of the day, no problem. At the end of the day, I think we're all neighbors here. So thanks.
Okay, well, again, sorry to have to play the heavy with timekeeping, but my job. But I want to thank, again, all the panelists for the great questions. Certainly our audience for listening to not only this, but probably the other debates this afternoon. And of course, special thanks go to the candidates who showed up. And I mean this sincerely. The people who didn't show up, you need to hold them accountable.
Hey, Andrew?
And thank you.
Andrew, we got 3 minutes. Do I have time for one direct person? I don't see why not. Real quick.
Make it a quick question. I'm trying to make sure that we're fair with all
of course.
with all the forms.
Well, I will fair on the form too. We get that. Real quick, and I will answer the
One question by Mike Edwards.
Yeah, sorry. This is Mike Edwards, U.S. Marine. I just had a question for Dan, and because I know how some of the gentlemen here answer. Thoughts on illegal, undocumented, whatever you want to call them, joining the military, serving honorably as a pathway to citizenship. Because a lot's been going on now. People getting deported after they've served, even though they got in with false papers, serving honorably, because I've served with a lot of them who love our country, and I think they're great. So
That's a really great question. Last night, the guest speaker was General Taguba, who brought to light the problems that happened at Abu Ghraib, and he told us a story about how he just turned 65 and was getting access to Medicare, and when he went to fill out the forms, he was told he wasn't a citizen, even though he had become a citizen when he was 11. And so to answer your question, obviously there's a lot of logistics, Mike, to making that happen, but I think if the people here in our country, and that illegal thing, trust me, I found out because I did the same thing. But yeah, I don't see why not. If that's something that they're willing to do and demonstrate that, like, I think that's a great solution. I think that would encourage people to come forward, actually. So, great question.
Give us some great military people too, so, okay, thank you. Thank you, Andrew.
We are concluded. Thank you all.